One Question is designed to give subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to One Question, where we highlight executive leaders in college athletics. Our guest today is Coach Bill Kramer. Coach Kramer is the head football coach at Naples High School down in Naples, Florida. Greetings, Coach. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Ty. Thanks for asking me on.
No problem, Coach. Now, Coach, you have an impressive career. You've been coaching for over 30 years with 24 years as a head coach. Of course, you've been at Naples, I believe, for 21 years as the head coach. In total, you have over 220 wins. And the reason I have you on is because of your involvement, right? You're in the football advisory committee for the Florida High School Athletics Association, second vice president for the Florida Athletic Coaches Association. You're also involved with the American Football Coaches Association on the public relations committee. So you have a wealth of experience in terms of overseeing what's important for not only just football, for high school athletics in general. What I'd like to know is, how do things that come down from the NCAA affect the way you and your colleagues do business as high school coaches and teachers? Of course, in the recent years, more information is being passed down from the NCAA and through the American Football Coaches Association. Now, my assumption is that things coming down from the NCAA is a part of the reason why you're involved as much as you are.
Yeah, there's no doubt that we've had more input in recent years. That's one of the reasons I got involved. A couple of reasons, and that I encourage younger coaches to get involved is, one, it really makes you understand that we're professionals and the responsibility / burden that we bear when we're really helping to create opportunities and habits. We always talk about habits in our program. It's all about the habits that you create, positive, the good habits you create. But that's based on what's happening at the level above us, so that when we do get edicts, which we've had when things come down from the NCAA that we have no input on, and sometimes we're the last to know or one of the last to know, and that's the part two of why to get involved at the high school levels, just so you can get some information, so you can know, kind of everything I've done in my career has been about how do I maximize my guys, how do I get them to break these negative cycles in their lives and their families' lives, and change them. Hopefully for eternity. I mean, and so when whatever it is that comes down, whether it's academic requirements, whatever it comes down to the eligibility center, and this is for all sports. This isn't just obviously football, but in all sports, all coaches are looking at how are they training, what are they doing different, and how to get my kid ready for that level. So all good coaches, I should say, So that definitely has been a driver for us. And all I can say about when we get just something thrown at us that we didn't know about, have no control over, we just got to work on the fly. We just got to, okay, guys, it's a new deal. Informal geometry that all of you have on your transcript is no longer accepted. Now we're going to get the other math, or just whatever it is.
Right. So essentially, you just have to adjust accordingly to whatever comes down the pike.
Yep.
I always wonder about that. Athletic directors and commissioners and presidents, they're so far removed from the high school coach. I just wonder if say, high school coaches had information and feedback to give to ADs and the people who are in charge of legislation. I don't know the most effective way to do it. I guess you probably spend a lot of time with people who are recruiting the guys who play for you down there, and then I go involved with the various committees and boards you're on. In terms of, I guess, the state of Florida, right? If there were something that the high school coaches felt was important for college coaches to know, how would you pass on information to move up that chain?
Yeah, Coach Barry at the AFCA would be our best conduit, I imagine. I've been asked to sit on a couple of panels there in Waco with him, and I've been to Indianapolis before for another symposium that the NCAA was involved in, and I've actually represented Florida for all sports. They asked me to go to another meeting with all of the sports administrators in the country where the NCAA was there. But those are few and far between. And the average coach, you got to remember that I'm teaching 6 classes a day. I'm doing my very best to not get fired too. So what happens to us, we kind of get so overwhelmed that I'm kind of a rarity most guys are just hanging on to the job and hanging on to their families and their marriages and working crazy hours and trying to do everything they can for their programs. And, in football, it's such a, we have anywhere between 150 and 180 kids in the program, that there's a lot of day-to-day. Like, we're doing, weekly grade checks and tutoring by subject area 5 days a week and just the maintenance of those sorts of things. Now we're not even getting into fundraising or college recruiting, which is a whole, another aspect of it. So I guess the short version to answer your question, I think it's really hard for us to have input. And, even when we're on the advisory committees and we get ideas down and we put it forward, it takes years for us to feel like a voice is heard.
Right.
And sometimes by the time it's heard, that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
It's just over.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, especially for coaches, especially in high school, right? Coaches in general on all levels, you're constantly evaluated daily, right? Especially during your season, you're evaluated, but then daily in terms of what you're doing for developing these people. And then for the people who teach high school and coach high school, you got classroom, you got a whole bunch of duties that you're evaluated by. So it's a tough situation. You mentioned recruiting there. Recently the date for recruiting moved to December.
Yeah.
And I wonder, of course, I was involved when I was with the AFCA. You mentioned some of those panels having you on. And when I was with the AFCA, making sure high school coaches were heard in terms of when this was coming down the pike. It's only been, I believe, one season. So, the long-term effect is yet to be seen. But how has that affected what you do during the season when the early signing date is in December as opposed to February, when coaches, I guess, their recruiting has to step up? And it makes everybody busier during the season. How has that affected you? Positively or negatively?
Yeah, that part hasn't affected us much. Interestingly, we had a guy sign early with Michigan last year, and one with UVA. I've got some Division I signees this year, but nobody's signing early this year. And what's happened, but maybe an unintended consequence that's just interesting to me, is the vast majority of schools do not want to have official visits, even though they're allowed to. They do not want to have them in the spring. They want to have them after the season or now. Everybody wants to be the last visit. They're afraid of a kid flipping. So if we have them in April or whatever, and they'll flip by early signing, or even by the next signing period in February. No one anticipated that. When I sat on the panel, a bunch of us thought it was a good idea, and really, I think it's a lot easier to recruit to a cold weather state in April than it is in January. But that really wasn't the case this last year. That could change because it's just the first year. But very few. The only teams that really pushed it hard as far as a spring visit were, like we've got a couple really top end recruits, and they'll take them whenever they can get them. They don't care. They know they're battling against Clemson and Alabama, and so they'll take whatever they can get. I'll tell you one of the worst rules I think, and I'll just say it because now we have a voice, and I don't know a high school coach that doesn't agree with it, is where the limited exposure that head coaches in college have to our guys. I mean, it used to be they could spend some time, they could come see them play, they could, on their open week, whatever, they could pick at least a few kids, and maybe more than that throughout the season if they were. And I know there's inequity because of availability of private jets and all of that, but the idea that with such limited access, the head coach is going to sign off on a guy, and then you're going to be a banner on ESPN the moment that the guy messes up. That's pretty rough right there. I think we wouldn't hire anybody like I would never hire a coach based on the amount of exposure that head coaches get to signees. So if we wouldn't hire a person, like the NCAA would never hire a person with that limited exposure. I don't think. I hope not. I would never do it. So it just makes it seems odd to me. It is not much common sense in that.
Right. It makes them have to heavily depend on their assistants.
Heavily depend on assistants. And you know what? I've got a bunch of probably more friends coaching college football than I do high school, and that's a whole nother conversation. The dynamics of college football staffs. I mean, that's a tough gig, and I know it's lucrative if you're just counting the money. At some levels it is, and that's where everybody kind of wants to get, I guess, but I'm not sure it's worth it.
Right. Well, you mentioned a couple of things there. You mentioned all of the recruiters want their the guys are recruiting to be the last visit. We want you to be the last visit on campus. Does that mean there's more happening right at the end of football season where they're trying to get more guys down there?
Yeah. And now for us, there's more happening now and through January, before National Signing Day. Where I'd preferred, even during the season when we had an open week on week 3 or something, and we had guys that I'm calling coaches and saying, hey, let's trip them now while we're open, so we don't have to worry about it later. I'm like, nah, coach, we really don't want to bring them up right now. We'd rather bring them, at the end of the season, as late as we can, because again, they felt like that somebody else, that the commitments wouldn't be strong enough. I've always advocated that and I think Coach Berry had this model as one of the offerings. I'm sure he did, but so that when we can't, if we offer a kid at whatever point, we also offer an NLI, and it's binding, and that's it. And then that NLI is gone, and put a time limit on it, a week, 10 days, whatever. And then the next month we can offer a kid again, and it's binding. And so that would eliminate a lot of the jockeying for position and who's going to be last and any of that. And it would eliminate all these, we get schools that come down here, and they'll offer in South Florida, they'll offer 40 scholarships. They only have whatever. Let's say they have 20 that year, and they've offered 40 just down here. And we know it because coaches talk, and the guy comes to our office and goes to the other however many schools in our area, and the numbers just don't add up. But that would end that. That would end this reckless,
the hedging your bets type recruiting kind of thing that guys are doing.
Absolutely, and on both sides. Also for the kids, because these kids that want to flip and want to feed the ego and put a hat on local TV or national TV or whatever, with 4 of them sitting there and guys' jobs on the line, that's a big deal. No more of that. And it's bad for athletes. Like, what are we about? That's just it's just a massive ego that would want to be in that position, in my view.
Right. Yeah, that is. It's grown to be very interesting. I wonder, when they're trying to visit all these guys in at the end of the season, and a school like Naples there, you guys are always in the playoffs. Does that affect things?
Yeah, I won't. Yeah, we typically play into December, so we'll just have to do it in January, after December, whatever. And so our guys try to take unofficials, in the summer or whatever, and get a pretty good idea already. I still, even right now, I've got a few guys that are seniors that are not committed but have offers, and it'll matter. Like, they'll take their official visits, and it'll matter here when the season's over.
Oh yeah, okay. So guys are still, even with the early signing, they're still holding out because, obviously they got a commitment to the season, and they have a commitment to doing what they do there for you. One of the things high school coaches were concerned about was that if a guy signed early and you were still in the playoffs, you might lose him for the rest of the playoffs because he doesn't want to injure himself after he's signed.
Yeah, that, I remember the guys from Texas in particular were really worried about that.
Right.
That has not been I've not seen that ever. It's only been a year, but we haven't had that at all.
Right, and of course it's it's later in December, so I guess that kind of takes care of that.
Yeah, it should be. That's right. The other thing that happens, Ty, is that with signing day in particular, is that the lower schools, they're all waiting to, the low-hanging fruit's going to get picked, and they're waiting to see what gets left. And so that's another reason they kind of want to wait. Everybody kind of wants to wait. So I have kids that have maybe, MAC offers, but they think they're good enough to play in the ACC or Big Ten or whatever. And so the kids too want to kind of wait and see who shakes loose after the first signing day.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Well, this has been a good conversation. I'll ask one final question here. In terms of the whole legislation and things that come down from the NCAA and how it affects teachers and coaches in high school, what are the best suggestions, I guess, you would have for, in college you have these sport administrators, right? They may be over football, or they're over basketball, over volleyball, over whatever sport they're over. If those athletic administrators could tell their coaches something, what do you think they should tell the coaches that are coming out to recruit, from your perspective as a high school coach, which would make everything operate a lot more smoother and more efficient?
Well, the very first thing I would say is every coach needs to always work with the high school coach and contact them ahead of time. So I get we have a lot of traffic, and a bunch of them will just show up. It'd be way better for everyone if they did not do that, especially with all of our new security systems in place. In Florida in particular, after the Parkland shooting, our campus, we put up fences and it's locked down. There's one way in, one way out. So it's become very different than it was even 5 years ago. And that's going to be true of every school in Florida. But also just I don't care whether it's baseball, volleyball, swimming. I think it's really important that the coaches that are recruiting make every effort to contact the high school coach and keep them in the loop on what's happening with their athlete. We'll have athletes in other sports that are missing, like you said, they're missing a game to go take an official visit. And like, how does that happen? Can you imagine the college coach saying, yeah, go see an NFL team or go to the Olympic team for a week or whatever and miss our games? Yeah, that should never happen. And I know they're super busy, and the smaller the school, the more hats the coaches have to wear. I understand that. But even if just locally, I think there's very little communication between local coaches, collegiate coaches, and I don't care what side of the school, and the high school coaches in their communities. And everybody's pressed for time, but it'd be really cool if we had a way of fostering communication between those groups. That would be a start, where people can chop it up over whatever's coming down or whatever changes they'd like to make. And because the more we coalesce and the more we find what we have in common, the smoother all of it is.
Right. And it's better for the student athlete.
Absolutely. That's what we're talking. We just for me, it's never the scoreboard. It's always, what habits are we developing and how do we get kids to maximize what God gave them. And so really, that's what we're talking about. And when that's happening, then everybody's reaping the benefits of that. The kid is, the coach is, the administration is. We don't have to worry about the negative end of it. So, and we're maximizing the positive end of it. And so the more we can get on the same page and find our similarities, build on what we have in common, then I think the better it is for everyone.
Right. I agree with that, Coach. Well, this has been an excellent conversation, Coach. I really appreciate you joining us here on One Question.
Thanks, Ty. Appreciate you having me.
That was Coach Bill Kramer. He's the head football coach at Naples High School down in Naples, Florida. He's been coaching for over 30 years with 21 years there at Naples and won 2 state championships. And of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of One Question is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.